Hello, random internet viewer, and today I'm being talking about the most heretical last boss queen from Villainess to Savior in the light novel version. And for me personally, I'm just gonna get this straight away. I personally did not like it, as I found there was a whole lot more repetitious events and other content that I think that would have been better off cut or just removed entirely. I'm not entirely sure if this is all like what all the like reincarnated as an Otome villainous is like, but that's what I personally have found entirely wrong with it. And I just did not like the repetitions of different characters' perspectives. But anyways, it's described as an award-winning otome isekai series that stars a final boss who decides to ditch the whole villainous strict and use her powers to protect and not destroy, but for the people of her kingdom. There's also a manga version. This is through Seven Seas or Seven Seas Entertainment, with the story and art by Tenichi and Suzo Nosuke. And it's coming out 15 for just the print version. It has about 434 pages, but honestly, I think like 10 to 30% of it is used by repeats of different perspectives of the same exact scene, which I personally think that I didn't really fully need instead. And most of the characters also, when I read it, felt entirely bland, but essentially you get reincarnated as a Tomy villain. They're like extremely young before the even game begins. They are the wicked final boss or the villainous, etc. They have basically everything, and then what kind of rotten future, so they're trying to prevent the bad ending. But for me, the main character, Pride, just felt like, honestly, like just wanted to get everyone to essentially say, hey, kill me if I turn evil, just do it because I know I am. But I'm like, stop being berating yourself, which that's for me personally. But yeah, I literally felt like 10 to 30% of the light novel was just basically different perspectives with maybe like one or two additional paragraphs. This is, of course, the English translation novel, and Seven Seas apparently have been known to cut specific content from translations, so take it as you will. But I felt that specific parts of it was just not entirely great and not entirely bad either. I would say it's like a 5 out of 10 entirely for me, but just the multiple repeats of the different character perspectives. For example, we got Stale or Stale, however you pronounce it. It's technically like spelled as stale, but I'm gonna call it Stale. But Stale, he's basically like the kid brother or adopted brother of Pride, but he's also supposed to be a love interest in the original game. For me personally, I didn't fully enjoy it, nor did I actually think it was entirely good. I mean, there was some relationships, but they basically said one event, and now they're entirely in love with Pride and devote, which I can understand. It's just basic, I guess, just basic normal like anime tropes, light novels, etc. You fall in love like for a minor thing, and now they're superly devoted over it. But yeah, like these, mind you, these alternative perspectives also last for quite a bit pages, which simply like either go for like the same length of amount. Like I wouldn't mind personally if it was like just shortened down or like just a quick comment or here or there of like said event of a different perspective. There's also many times that I would personally feel that the event itself was actually just done basically bland or just have a little bit more descriptive. In fact, I found that Stale or Arthur, who was the second love interest, quote unquote, introduced, who I thought those guys were actually more like one and a half D, or they actually had a little bit more development compared to actual like main character, because I barely felt like Pride, the main character, or the main girl, like the ex villain, I guess, actually did much, and I actually felt more attachment to the side characters because they actually felt like they had more like depth and more background instead of like, oh my god, I'm a bad villain, please kill me when I get. And like literally they probably literally talked to both Stale and Arthur to say, hey, kill me if I turn evil. And I'm like, they both think like how in no way should be turned evil, because she's doing like these amazing things, she risking her life for some basic knights, because she claims that these knights, if they throw away their lives, they'll throw away all the future potential lives that they'll actually throw away. So I mean, like, and she barely realized that there's like such thing. I don't know. Like, I'm not entirely sure if the author itself is trying to go for like a butterfly effect or whatnot, but I don't know. Like first, initially, it's like the dad was saved, but he's supposed to die in the game. So, but like sometimes even these like simple like different character perspectives, like mind you, these are either like basically takes what a normal scene length is and then double it by adding like over that half of the double, or just basically just taking the entire scene, but like just twisting it slightly into a different character perspective because why not? And they last for quite a bit of pages. They might even add like a couple more paragraphs because you gotta give that character a little bit more background because why not? I mean, it was fine if they added like just a quick like mention or a quick swap to it, but there's another thing like I've hardly to know like who had their viewpoint shifted. Like, oh, it's Pride Woman, but now it's like the General or it's Arthur or whoever. Like, it was barely confused. It was a little bit confusing at first, and even still was when reading the first volume, and that just felt it was quite just confusing and figuring out like who's what and who's what and who isn't. But instead, it just felt like, yeah, the protagonist was just one dimensional. I was just constantly begging herself to either be killed because she thinks she'll just be a villainess regardless. Like, do you not realize that technically they have free choice? And she thinks, oh, she's getting controlled by the previous pride, or there's hints of it. I'm like, okay, is there a way to remove it or whatnot? Like, I literally at some point just started skipping pages because I'm like, I don't want to read the same exact scene because it was just getting so utterly repetitive for me personally. And that's what some people may like. I mean, I give it like a 5 out of 10 personally. It would have been like maybe a 7 if it, or it's like 6 or 7 if it didn't have it. I thought it was semi-enjoyable. It was actually pretty alright. It was basically pretty, I guess, quote unquote generic of a otome isekai villainous reincarnation. That's what I personally would think. But instead, it was annoying. Most of the characters didn't really feel like they got much development. There's supposed to be a second one called Tiara, like a second like kid sister called Tiara, or Tiara, however you pronounce it, Tiara. And personally, it's just I wish they just briefly glossed over and her character, like she was barely mentioned, but she's supposed to be the whole protagonist. Like I figured she might get like more development, but instead it's like let's just give more development to the main love interests instead of either the protagonist Pride or perhaps the protagonist in the game, the Tiara. But instead, let's just give it off to the main character. And not just personally me, like it's nice. Like the book itself actually felt fine. I thought the story was interesting. The world was completely fine. I thought like the basically Pride's character, I guess abilities, like she has to look at like a simple attack once or a simple like move or whoever does one at once, and she basically already learns it. Basically, kind of like I'm almost a photogenic and really good like memory and all that. But they kind of played it off as like, oh, this is the last boss and this is kind of her powers kind of thing. I mean, personally, I would just think that if they changed a couple things or like added like one or two quick comments of like paragraphs, not like repeat the same event but in a different perspective, I think it would have been fine and it would have been a little bit shorter and a little bit more bearable and probably higher. But otherwise, I mean, it's decent if you want to go for like if you are willing to like either skip or know that you have that like almost repetition in it, then I guess that's fine. But personally, I'm just gonna say 5 out of 10 for me. It's not the greatest, not the worst, but it's probably closer towards a 4.5, 4 for me instead. But I'm just gonna keep it as a 5, rounded up. Anyways, that's it. Toodaloo.